Lillian from Jewish Workshops. It is a pleasure to be joining all of you today, and we are extremely privileged to have Rabbi Manis Friedman on the line. Before we get started, I'd love to see who's joining us and where you're from. So if you can go to your chat box, it also may be called the question box on the right-hand side of your screen, and write your first name and where you're joining us from. I'd love to be able to welcome you. And right away, we got a hello from Sydney, Australia. So hello to you too. Welcome Patty from Texas and Natanya from New Zealand. Welcome Millie from Mexico, Yifat from Israel. Welcome Zipporah from Atlanta, Sophia from Israel, Jane from Chicago, Andy from Israel, welcome. Amy from New York, Devora from New York, Shuli and Robin from Israel, welcome. Deb from Cincinnati, welcome Alex from Moscow, and Samantha from Florida, Basia from Brooklyn, Elisheva from Columbia, welcome. Rachel from Kiryat Sefer, and Rennie from Oklahoma, welcome Gloria from Cleveland, and Hannah from Dallas, Vera from Jerusalem, Chevy from Manchester, welcome, welcome. Cheryl from Omaha and Maya from Israel, welcome Barb from Maryland, Jody from Boston, Malka from New York, welcome Alana from Ohio, and Susan from South Florida. Welcome Helene from Toronto, Emily from California, Donna from Maryland, Miriam from Passaic, Nechama from Jerusalem, Sarah from Ontario. Welcome Lydia from South Carolina, Andy from Alexandria, Virginia. Welcome Mindy from Florida, and Elaine from South Dakota, Hadassah from Chicago, Hannah from Baltimore. Oh my goodness, people are continuing to pour in here. It's so nice to see everyone from all over the world. Welcome Julie from Atlantic Beach and Amy from Ohio. Welcome Pamela from New Jersey, Michael from New York. Welcome James from Montreal, Leah from Toronto. Welcome, welcome. Joelle from Mexico City, and Mark from Montreal, Stephanie from Montreal, Marlene from Montreal. Wow, a lot of people from Canada. Welcome. John from Ottawa. Welcome Shoshana from Pittsburgh, and Ellen from Phoenix, Chava from Kenya. Welcome Zach from Israel, Minna from Ramat Beit Shemesh, Chava from Philadelphia, Leslie from New Hampshire. Welcome to everyone. As people continue to pour in here, I want to say a big hello. I'm sorry if I missed your name, but I could probably stay here for the rest of the hour. And I'd love to, say hello and welcome to everyone. This is really amazing, and we are likely to hit capacity, so I just want to remind you to please stay on the line until the very end. I don't want you to leave and get locked out. We've got a lot to cover today, and we are really excited to have all of you here. Over the last 3 years, Jewish Workshops has offered a variety of programs on marriage, relationships, personal growth and introspection, and emotional and mental well-being. But during these unprecedented times, it seems like nothing is quite quenching the thirst that many of us have as we search for answers in the dark. So we asked world-renowned philosopher, author, and counselor Rabbi Manis Friedman to introduce to us today his unique insights and perspective on letting go of our worry and stress and anxiety that we're finding ourselves in, and finally really settling down and finding the faith that we have within us. So make sure to stay on the line until the very end, where we will address as many questions as possible live on the line. And I thank all of you for sending in questions ahead of time. We'll get to some of those as well. And then, of course, for everyone who's here on the line right now, please feel free to send in your questions into this question box right here. And we will go ahead and answer as many as we can at the very end. We will also introduce and give you the opportunity to join Rabbi Friedman week by week for a full online program at a special discounted rate just for attendees. So again, make sure to stay on until the end. It is a supreme honor to be hosting Rabbi Friedman. Rabbi Friedman is a world-renowned author, counselor, lecturer, and philosopher who uses ancient wisdom and modern wit as he captivates his audiences around the world. Over 150,000 copies of his provocative yet entertaining tapes, both audio and video, have been sold, and his widely praised books, Doesn't Anyone Blush Anymore, is in its 4th printing. Rabbi Friedman has also been featured internationally in over 200 print articles and interviewed on more than 50 television and radio talk shows. Without further ado, Rabbi Friedman, I'd like to go ahead and pass the microphone over to you. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
A pleasure, really a pleasure. because otherwise I'm just sitting here in the house doing nothing. We are locked in. So, where to begin? Let's start off with what we should not believe and what we should not think. And that is the suggestion that many are making that what's going on in the world today is a punishment because God is not pleased with us. Well, first of all, that takes a lot of faith. You have to really believe God runs the world and that everything that happens is by divine purpose and by divine plan, and that this plan is to punish us, God forbid. That cannot be entertained at all. It is wrong-minded for the very simple reason, after all we've been through as a people for the last 2,000 years, just reading a brief outline of Jewish history is enough to depress you. It's been horrible. 2,000 years of endless, continuous, impossible situations, culminating, of course, with the Holocaust. Under these circumstances, what does God expect of us? You would think all he can expect is that we survive. Given all the suffering, given all the impossible conditions in which we are forced to live until after the Holocaust, and to some degree even today, what realistically can God expect of us? If we survive, we are heroes. Although I think calling people who survived the Holocaust, calling them survivors is so wrong. They're much more than survivors. They didn't just remain alive. They were incredible heroes. They started families, they started businesses, they started Jewish organizations. They're not survivors. They're Holocaust heroes, not Holocaust survivors. But even if we only survived and nothing more, that would already be heroic. So to think that God is disappointed with us to such a degree that he would even punish, that's just preposterous. It makes God sound like a Cossack. It can't be possible. It can't be. It's wrong-minded. Particularly, we see in the Torah over and over again that when God is, for whatever reason, angry at the Jewish people, the Jew is supposed to argue in the defense of the people. So for anyone to get up and say, oh yeah, what's happening now? Yeah, because we deserve punishment. No, we don't deserve punishment. We don't. Even 40 days after hearing from God at Mount Sinai, not to make graven images, and the Jews went ahead and made graven images. Did Moshe agree that the Jews deserve to be punished? No. And that was when everything was perfect. 3,300 years later, how can anybody agree that Jews deserve punishment? How can anybody believe that God would think that we deserve punishment? We deserve nothing but reward. That's just common sense, decency. So that idea or that thought that we are being punished, it is completely un-Jewish. It's not even humane. It's wrong. It's terribly, terribly wrong. So we can discard that. People will ask, but shouldn't we deserve what we get? Isn't there a concept of deserving? So if I find my life being very difficult, shouldn't I assume, or at least wonder, whether I deserve better than this? So first of all, it is true we want to deserve, and we should be deserving. But what makes us deserving? To a great degree, we are deserving because of schus avos, in the merit of our ancestors, of our forebears, our zadis and bubbies. In their merit, we deserve. Even if we can't think of anything special we ourselves did, but we get the benefits of their goodness. It's inherited for 1,000 generations. So even if I don't feel I deserve personally, I can always rely on the schus avos. There's also the deservingness of our children. They are innocent, they're pure, they deserve. We indirectly or directly benefit from that. As their parents, we get that deservedness. But more than anything else, of course we want to be deserving. But since when does God wait for us to be deserving? God is generous and God is kind before we deserve. Because to give us what we deserve, that's justice, not kindness. So if God is kind, he will give us even before we deserve, even if we never deserve. Because kindness doesn't judge you. So God gives because he's kind, not because we've earned it. So that whole subject of do I deserve, don't I deserve, it's a purely theoretical thing. We needn't go there at all. It's a can of worms that we'll never get out of. Am I getting more than I deserve? Oh, that's worrisome too. It's too good to be true. That's worrisome too. So as soon as we start with do I deserve or don't I deserve, we're already totally confused. It's not worth opening that can. So never mind deserving. The question is, what is God up to? Because what's happening is his plan in his world, what he wants, what he created the world for. It's not all about me. So the question of whether I deserve, whether I'm being punished, whether I'm good, it's really irrelevant. The relevant question is, this is God's world. What can we do to make his world better? And why would we want to make it better? Because it's his world. If it's important to him, if it's valuable to him, if it's precious to him, then we want to make it better. That's where we fit in. We are in his world trying to help his world become what he wants it to be. Any thought about my personal deserving or the deservedness of the Jewish people must lead to the conclusion that the Jewish people, me included, deserves only blessings and only kindness. Because we are already better than anyone could have expected, given the circumstances. So of course we know how imperfect we are. Of course we know how we have fallen short of the standards of our Zaydis and Bubbies. And yeah, of course, nobody in their right mind claims to be a good Jew. To be a good Jew is ambitious. And we're the first to admit that we're lacking. Of course we're lacking. But to think that we are guilty of anything, that it's our fault, never. Never. So what should we be thinking? The real optimum, best thought, most true, most correct, most helpful, most holy is that what is happening today is very good. Because the world is always moving forward in the divine plan. It's God's plan. It never gets stopped or blocked or stagnates. It's always moving forward. With us or despite us, God's plan moves forward. So we have to assume that since we are not creating the problem, we didn't create the virus, we didn't create the isolation. Since we're not creating the problem, then it must not be a problem. It must be part of the progress that makes the world perfect the way God intended it to be. Why doesn't it look like it's progressing? Well, for a number of reasons. First of all, the fake news. How are we supposed to know whether it's progressing when nobody reports progress? The only thing that gets reported is bad news, or what looks like bad news, or even made up bad news, imagined bad news, assumption of bad news. So if we want to know what's happening to the world, you can't judge by what you're reading in the papers or hearing online or in the mass media. That won't tell you anything. Look around in your own little world. Do you see people being heroic? Do you see people being unusually kind, sensitive, concerned? Do you see people helping each other in whatever ways they can? Little things, but helpful. The world is getting better. People are getting better. The bad news, the violence, the confusion, you're actually seeing a healing crisis. The evil doesn't know what to do with itself. It doesn't even try to justify itself. It doesn't pretend to be good. It's just blatant, unapologetic evil. Selfish. And when the evil becomes unapologetic, when it does not hide behind the good, then its days are numbered. It can't survive. So the more blatant the evil becomes, the shorter its existence. Evil is committing suicide because it's over. We're living through some amazing, amazing times. There is so much good happening in the world because of the virus, because of the isolation, not despite it. So again, if we should be thinking about whether we deserve, now more than ever, yes. More than 3 months ago. Even 3 months ago, we deserved only blessings. So let's talk about our Emunah. What does it take to be confident, to be absolutely secure in the knowledge that everything is going to be good? and even better. What does it take? At first glance, it seems irrational. What are you talking about? Where do you see goodness? The world is falling apart. It's getting worse by the day. The darkness is increasing. On what do you base your optimism? There is many arguments and many grounds for optimism. But real Emunah doesn't need rational explanations. The very thought that God runs the world is enough. God runs the world, well, then everything is fine. You're in good hands. Nothing is going to go wrong. Nothing can go wrong if God is running the world. To believe that something can go wrong means God is out of control. That's what it means. If something can go wrong, it means it's not the way God wants his world to be. Well, who did that? If God is running the world because it's his world and he's concerned with his world and he pays attention to his world, how can something go wrong? It can't. It's not that it won't, it can't. So there was a book called Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? The argument there, in the defense of God, is that we can't blame God for the bad things that are happening because somehow he's not in charge of that. He feels our pain, but he can't stop the pain because it's not his job to stop the pain. I'm not sure exactly what that means. The author is trying to defend God's justice or God's goodness. But in doing so, he makes God sound incapable, inadequate, not in control of his world. I think it would be better to believe that God is causing the pain than to think that the pain is being caused by something other than God. Like there's some other God. The good God and the bad God. And the good God can only sympathize and empathize with us, but he can't stop the bad God. That's Greek mythology, not Judaism. I'd much rather have a capable God than an impotent one. So, nothing can go wrong in God's world. There's pain. I'm not sure that that necessarily means it's wrong. There's pain that is necessary, life-giving, life-saving, like an operation. There's pain. Nothing went wrong. Even death is not necessarily wrong. It's what the legal term wrongful death. Oh, that's upsetting. Death is not upsetting. Wrongful death. But ask yourself a simple question. Is wrongful death possible? Is it possible? Somebody died and it was wrong. He shouldn't have died. Well, then why did he? In other words, since God runs the world, Who caused something to happen that shouldn't have happened? The only way something can happen when it shouldn't happen is if there's another God, another cause, another mover and shaker other than our God, the God of Israel. To believe that is completely idolatrous, completely untrue. There's only one God. So why do painful things happen is a good question. Why do wrong things happen? Wrong things don't happen. Nobody suffers even a stub toe without there being a good reason. And the good reason is not necessarily punishment. So here's how we should be thinking about it. God created many, many worlds, like heaven and earth. There are heavenly worlds, and there's the earth, the most earthy of worlds, the lowest of all worlds. In heavenly worlds, there is no pain. Like even Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, there was no pain in childbirth. There was no pain or effort necessary to grow your food. By the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. That's only outside of the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, whatever you need grows on a tree. So in the Garden of Eden world, which is not the lowest of all worlds, there's no pain. There's no frustration, there's no struggle. But in our world, outside the Garden of Eden, it's the lowest world. So there's pain. There's death. Not as punishment. It's the nature of the lowest world that life does not remain consistent. It comes and it goes. Not our fault, not punishment. It's the nature of the lowest world. It is a world of pain and of frustrations and of challenges. That's the nature of the world. Why are we placed in this world? To fix it. To fix it. If somebody's not well, we cure them. If somebody's hungry, we feed them. If somebody is naked, we dress them. If somebody's in danger, we save them. That's fixing the world. A world that we didn't destroy, by the way. It's not like we're fixing our own mistakes. We're fixing the world, which is by its creation, by its nature, not a very godly world. And therefore there's pain. But the pain is natural to the world. It is not gone wrong. It's not a world gone wrong. So the fact that there is pain doesn't mean that it's bad. The fact that there's death doesn't mean that it's bad. It's the world that we need to fix. So when Mashiach comes, death will be over. We'll have fixed it. So where do we get our optimism from? The optimism comes from the realization this world, this painful, dark world is God's ultimate purpose. God is not interested in heaven. He's interested in earth. There is no way that the earth does not reach its perfection, God's intention for how the world should be. There's no way that's not going to happen. It is happening all the time. And if we can contribute, if we can be God's partner in creation, to bring more goodness, more godliness, more kindness into the world, that's what we're here for. So if you see a darkness, if you see a negative, painful element within the world, there's no reason to be discouraged. There's your opportunity. Pitch in. Make it better. So for every pain in the world, we should add some pleasure. For every disappointment, we should add some encouragement. That's our job. So nothing is going wrong. We keep chipping away at the darkness and the negativity of the world until the world becomes perfect. Nothing has ever happened in this world that wasn't part of God's plan. For the very simple reason, there's nothing that could cause anything to happen without it being God's plan. That's like Emunah 101. Do you believe that God runs the world? The early idolaters back in the time of Avraham, they believed that God created the world because who else could? But that God is too busy and too important to run the world. He's not a landlord. So yes, he created the world and he lets you live in his world, but don't turn to him for heat in the winter. He's not a landlord. Who do you turn to? The sun. Sun gives heat. And so they worship the sun. Not as the creator. They never believed that the sun created the world. That's preposterous. And they were not dumb. They were highly intelligent people. They made all the great inventions. Noach invented the plow. So whoever invented the wheel or musical instruments or culinary art, those were pure geniuses. We're benefiting today from their genius. So they didn't think the sun created the world. What they believed is that God has better things to do than run the world, and so he left the running of the world to the sun and the moon and the constellations, the laws of nature that God put into place, and now nature runs the world. God is off doing something more impressive. The Torah says there is nothing more impressive, and God is not interested in anything else. This is his project, running this world. And so nothing can happen unless he makes it happen. To believe that there's another force, another power, another influence that can make things happen outside of God's plan, that is pure idolatry. Satan did it, that's idolatry. Satan can't do anything that God doesn't tell it to do. So let's stop worrying. Our only concern should be, what can I do to make things better? That's our only concern. We don't want to be passive partners in creation. We want to be active partners in creation. The chief rabbi of Israel, the former chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Lau, an amazing person. If you want to see an example of real Emunah, read his book. out of the depths. He went from being a child in a concentration camp to being the chief rabbi of Israel. It's an amazing saga. He was visiting with the Rebbe, with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and they spoke about the problems in Israel and the problems Jews were facing all over the world. And towards the end, Rabbi Lau said, "What's going to be? In the face of all of these problems, what's going to be?" And the Rebbe said to him, rather than asking what's going to be, we should ask, what more can we do? Rabbi Lau quotes the Rebbe often when he speaks in public. Rather than asking what's going to be, we should ask, what more can we do? When I heard this the first time from Rabbi Lau, it got me thinking, what is wrong with asking what's going to be? Seems like a pretty good question. Seems like we would benefit greatly if we knew what was going to be. So why would the Rebbe say, let's not ask that, let's ask what we can do? What's wrong with asking both? So here's an interesting thing. What's going to be? Well, there are people who are pessimistic. And if you open the conversation, if you start with the thought, with the question of what's going to be, you're going to get depressed. Because it doesn't look good. Maybe that's why the Rebbe said, let's not ask what's going to be, because it's a depressing thought. We know that was not the Rebbe's thinking. So that can't be the meaning. How about the Rebbe was a very practical person. What's going to be, we really can't control. It's not a practical thing. What more we can do, that's practical. So the Rebbe was saying, rather than ask about things we can't control, let's talk about things we can control. Okay. Reasonable. But it still doesn't resolve the question of what's going to be. It's true, we can't control what's going to be. But wouldn't it be nice to know? I think the real meaning of that story, of that statement, what's going to be? How could we even ask such a question? We know what's going to be. Mashiach is going to come, and the world is going to become wonderful. What's going to be? There's no question. There's no mystery. What's going to be is very good. The future is very good. Why? Because it's God's world. He's on top of it. So what's the question? God's world is going to turn out to be perfect. But if you really believe that, if you know what's going to be and it's going to be good, well, then we don't have to do anything more, do we? So here's the dilemma. If I'm confident that things will be good, then I won't ask what more I can do. So it seems like you can only have one of the two questions. You can't have both. If you ask what's going to be, the answer is it's going to be good. Well, then there's no question about what I should do. I don't have to do anything. If I ask what more can I do, that means that the end result may not be good. Because if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, then it's not going to work out. So if you remember in the story of Purim, Mordechai wants Esther to go to the king, even though she might get killed. So he wants her to risk her life by going to the king. But what does he say to her to encourage her to go? He says to her, "Revach v'hatzolo yamid laYehudim mimokim achid." The Jews will be saved one way or the other. Don't worry about that. If you don't go, somebody else, the miracle will happen some other way, because Jews are going to be fine. And yet you want me to risk my life? So Mordechai says, don't worry about the Jews. Jews are here forever. Jews are part of the vast eternal plan. There will not be a world without Jews. Don't worry about Jews. But why did you become the queen? Mi idea in le'es kazei sigat lamalchus. This could be the very reason that you became queen. In other words, this is your mission, to complete the mission for which you were born, not to save the Jewish people. You don't have to be that dramatic. But you've been in the palace for 10 years. Not that you want to be there. So you've been suffering. And now the reason for your suffering has arrived. If you don't fulfill that, you've wasted 10 years. You haven't contributed what you could contribute, and the contribution for which your soul came into this world. So yes, it's a small contribution. You're not saving the Jewish people. But that small contribution is the very reason for your existence. You don't want to blow that. And how significant is that? It's worth risking your life for. Because this is what your life is all about. This is how we should be thinking today. What's going to be? It's going to be wonderful. So how important is it for me to make my contribution? Worth risking your life. So yes, the two questions can go hand in hand. I know what's going to be, and it's going to be wonderful. I still have to ask, what can I do to make it better? Because I don't want the world to become perfect despite me, without me. I want to add my contribution. And how significant is that? It's the very reason for which I was born, for which I've been alive all these years. And now an opportunity shows itself and the world needs a little contribution from me. And I make that contribution and it's all worthwhile. Justifies everything. So what does our Emunah tell us? We always think of Emunah as a response to fear or anxiety. That's not the only function of Emunah. Of course, it's helpful. When we start to think everything's going to fall apart, we start to think it's all going to go down the drain. Of course, Emunah is there to sweeten the vision. But there's more to Emunah than that. Emunah is also the secure knowledge that I am here for a reason. Not only that God is here for a reason, I'm here for a reason. I was created for a reason. I am necessary in the vast eternal plan. So to have faith that the plan will work, that's nice. But I also have to have faith that my contribution is essential. So some people think if you believe in God, then you leave it all in his hands, and what you do or don't do becomes less important. That's not true Emunah. Be consistent. If you believe that everything is going to work out because God created the world with a plan, well, aren't you part of that plan? So what is your part in that plan? So your Emunah not only tells you that God is doing what he needs to do, but it also tells you that what you can do needs to happen too. So it doesn't dismiss you or make you less significant. On the contrary, it makes your contribution much more significant. And the fact that you're not perfect and you're not important and you're not powerful doesn't matter. God didn't ask you to be powerful. He asked you to be good. And he didn't ask you to be perfectly good. He asked you to do as much good as you can. And that goodness that you can do is absolutely essential. Now we have a much nicer picture of ourselves and the world. Nothing is going wrong. The world is going to be perfect. God is on top of everything. And the God who created the world created you as his partner. Look around and see where your contribution is necessary. Who can you help today? With a kind word, with a little encouragement, with a little inspiration. Help a Jew do another mitzvah. Even the mitzvah of being happy. Really important today. So look around and become an active partner. When you're feeling productive, all the anxiety goes away. Anxiety comes when we feel helpless, when we can't think of anything to do. Once you get busy doing goodness, the anxiety goes away. You feel productive, you feel necessary, you feel like there is rhyme and reason to what is going on, which is very important because we can't stand mindlessness. We can't stand the thought that what's going on makes no sense. Senseless, our brains shut down, blow a fuse. Can't handle senseless. We can handle painful. And then we have handled painful for 2,000 years. But we can't handle senseless. So when we feel like our existence is useless, that's the worst thing. When we become productive and useful, everything makes sense again. Are there some questions we should deal with?
Yes, we've had some really great questions coming in. A few have actually overlapped. So I'm going to start with this one. When you say that everything is happening, everything that happens is good and progressive through God's plan, then why do we oftentimes try to do things to stop it or pray that it goes away.
That's our partnership. There are some things that God asks us to fix, so that he is fixing the world constantly, but he asks us to take responsibility for some pieces of the world. Each of us has a little piece of the world that God needs us to fix. And sometimes we fix it through prayer. Usually we fix it through activity, by doing good, by talking good, sometimes by thinking good, depending on what the darkness is. So if the darkness is negativity, then thinking positive is its antidote.
Okay, thank you. I have a few other questions here. Why is it that oftentimes other teachers or Rabbeim tell us that things that are happening around us are a punishment for Lashon Hara or Gashmias or Sinas Chinam, that the bad things that are happening are actually because of certain things that we're doing wrong? How can we, see that that's not actually a punishment?
There are so many reasons. First of all, punishment has to fit the crime. People dying from corona, that's the punishment for Lashon Hara? That's absurd. The punishment for Lashon Hara is a skin condition. Nothing more serious than that. So the suffering or the pain that's going on cannot be punishment for sin, because we're not that sinful. It's got to match. Number two, before there can be punishment, there has to be judgment. God is a judge, not a punisher. He's not an executioner. He is the judge. Judgment means you take into account the good and the bad, the circumstances, the motivation. There's a huge difference between a person who sins intentionally, maliciously, or a person who sins unintentionally or out of ignorance. When you take everything into consideration, then you have judgment. When you simply assume punishment, that's like in a Russian court. There's no judgment. You're going to suffer, and that's it. God is a true judge. He doesn't miss anything. So now ask the simple and obvious question. Given our circumstances, given the fact that we were not there at Mount Sinai, given the fact that we never saw a Beis Hamikdash, we never heard from a Navi, we don't even know what holy means. We read it in a book. We don't really know what it means. So if somebody is not keeping Shabbos, is it because he wants to violate Shabbos? Or he has no idea what Shabbos means? Shabbos is a holy day. Oh, right. What's a holy day? Does anybody know? Even the biggest Talmud Chacham today, does he know what holy means? So, if you have judgment, then punishment is not a foregone conclusion. On the contrary, taking everything into consideration, the Jew who today tells his children, we are Jews, is a tzaddik. You have so many reasons to forget about being Jewish. Good reasons. But we don't. tzaddik. Let me give you an interesting example. This year, Pesach, I get a phone call from a man who lives completely alone. No children, no wife. And he's isolated because of the corona. He's locked down in his apartment. The night of Pesach, the Seder night, he realized that it's Pesach. He hadn't even thought about it. And he hadn't bought any matzah. And he felt really bad. So to make a long story short, he went into the pantry and he found rice cakes. They're round and they're kind of, texture is kind of like a matzah, at least from a distance. With a little imagination, it's like a matzah. So he took 3 rice cakes and tried his best to make a Seder, which he had never done before. He had always gone to public Seder, family Seder. What do you think of this man's Seder? There are those who are very religious who would say that it was a mockery of a Seder. It was wrong of him to do that. He hadn't fulfilled any mitzvah whatsoever because rice cakes are not matzah. And who knows what else he messed up in the Seder. So it's an insult to God. He shouldn't have done it. It's embarrassing. A secular Jew would say, why did he even bother? It really wasn't necessary. So, you didn't buy matzah, so forget about it. You'll do it next year. Well, what's with this desperation? It's not that he shouldn't have done it. It wasn't necessary. There's no need to do that. Next year, when you remember, if you remember, and you buy the matzah and you figure out how to make a Seder, then make a Seder. If not, then skip it. What's your problem? What's the truth? The truth is, the man did not fulfill the mitzvah. He did not. Making that Seder did not fulfill any of the obligations that a Jew has on Pesach. But to God, this was the most precious of all the Sedarim that happened that night, all over the world. He forgot that it's Pesach. Whose fault is that? He wasn't raised with a lot of Judaism. It's not his top priority in life. Yeah, he knows that there is Pesach, but he wasn't keeping an eye on the calendar. It wasn't his primary concern because he wasn't raised that way. So whose fault is it that he didn't remember that it's Pesach and he didn't go out and buy a matzah? Whose fault is it? It's the history that we went through. It's not the fault of any of us. Given our history, the Holocaust and the disruption and the displacement and coming to America and having to get adjusted, all of that took a toll. The result was that his father didn't teach him to make a Seder. Not his fault at all. And yet, he felt terrible that the night of the Seder will go by and he hasn't done anything Jewish. God can't get over that. It brings God to tears. How loyal, how devoted, how sensitive the Jew is, despite all that has gone on. That's real Emunah. Emunah means, I don't know why I'm Jewish, but I am so Jewish. That's Emunah. That is the deepest, most essential part of being a Jew. The part that we don't even have to think about. We're not educated, we're not inspired, we're not raised this way, and yet it is so powerful. And every Jew expresses it in a different way. In this particular case, it was Pesach. Many other Jews, it's Yom Kippur. You know, a famous story, Sandy Koufax, one of the greatest pitchers in baseball history, wouldn't pitch in a World Series game on Yom Kippur. The whole world was so impressed. Jews were so proud. He wouldn't pitch on Yom Kippur. Well, it turns out he didn't pitch on Rosh Hashanah either. Nobody made a big deal about it. He wouldn't pitch on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. Was he raised Orthodox? Was he raised with knowledge? Was he inspired by anything to be a Jew? No. No. But he knew there was this thing called Yom Kippur, and he wouldn't pitch on Yom Kippur. There's a famous football player who wouldn't eat or drink on Yom Kippur, but he was playing football, and you get very dehydrated. And it was heroic of him to play the game without drinking. So you say, well, what do you make of a guy like that? He wouldn't drink because it's Yom Kippur, but he was playing football on Yom Kippur. So is he a tzaddik or is he a sinner? The answer is he's not a tzaddik and he is not a sinner. He is an essential Jew who happens to be the victim of a Holocaust, of a world turned upside down in the time of his grandfather. So in a sense, he's greater than a tzaddik. His not drinking on Yom Kippur brought God to tears. Who has such devoted children? So, the least we can do is be proud of our fellow Jew. Don't deserve punishments. We deserve only reward. Deserve. Now, these people who say this is punishment, they're going to find quotes for you. Oh, it says this and it says that. That's God's business. God can say, if you do this, you deserve punishment. Our job is to defend, not to agree with God. So never mind those quotes. They're irrelevant to you. Your job is to always defend the Jewish people. Never to agree to their punishment. a very powerful story. There was this big debate, the infamous debates between the church and the Jewish leader of the time. There were many famous, infamous debates. In one of the debates, the Christian asked the rabbi, "Why is your God so punishing?" And the rabbi said, "Your God is not punishing. Your God is all about forgiveness. So you end up being the punisher. We would rather leave the punishing to God. We don't punish people." What an amazing statement. When God says you deserve punishment, that's God's business. We don't go there. We defend our fellow Jew. Just like when God makes somebody hungry, we don't applaud God. We feed the hungry. God makes somebody ill, we cure them. That's our job. Since when is it your role to agree with God for every punishment you think he's imposing? That is so nasty. You enjoy seeing God punish people? What is wrong with you? When the Egyptians were drowning, the angels were singing their daily songs, and God said, "What are you singing? My creations are drowning." And those were the Egyptians. So that whole subject is just so un-Jewish. Punishment, suffering, hell. It's not our business. Our business is to say no Jew deserves to suffer. No Jew deserves to go to hell. What God does is God's business, but it's not my enjoyment. I don't agree with it. I certainly don't like it. So to get up in public and say, this is why it's happening, because you talk Lashon Hara, what are you doing? There's a word in German, Schadenfreude, to take pleasure in people's suffering. It's not a nice thing. If you really thought people were being punished, then you should sit and cry for them. Be a mensch. Let's move on to a better question.
Okay, great. Thank you. I do want to there are some more questions coming in, and I want to get to as many as possible. But while I still have all of you on the line, I also see people asking, to tell them a little bit more about the full series. So let me get to all of that information for you. Then we'll get to some more questions over here. But in the meantime, today's class was, again, just an introduction to everything that Rabbi Friedman has to offer and share with you. So let me tell you a little bit about the full series that we are starting next week. And it starts off with a full series of 6 weeks, starting with next Monday, the origin of Emunah. So we definitely want to go ahead and get a little bit of a better idea of what Emunah is. How do we define it? Is it an opinion? Is it an emotion? Begin your journey by discovering what Emunah really is and start unraveling the true meaning of faith. Then the next week will be followed by where can I find my faith? So where does Emunah take place in a person? Does it come from the brain or the heart? Discover how Emunah affects all aspects of you. Then the third week will be, can anxiety and Emunah coexist? My fear, worry, and stress have taken over my life. Where is my faith? Understand the role that Emunah plays in your life and how it can effectively combat the overwhelming feelings of hopelessness and despair. And the next following week is, why is faith an important factor in a relationship? Discovering Emunah in your marriage. Uncover practical ways to infuse your marriage or any relationship with the power of Emunah. Followed by Emunah in my family. Am I a good enough parent even if I can't do it all? Where does Emunah fit in the parent-child relationship? Find out how your faith can strengthen the bond you have with your children and make you the role model they need and deserve. And finally, a full hour Q&A. Gain solutions to your personal questions through a live Q&A and implementation session. So each ongoing class will be live and interactive, allowing you to get your biggest questions answered and stay completely anonymous if you choose. They will all take place on Mondays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Israel time. But don't worry if you can't attend a live class. There will always be a recording available to you the very next day in your own personal membership area, and that will be available to you for a lifetime, so you can listen to it or download it at your convenience. And as I mentioned, our first class starts next Monday already, July 27th. In addition to the full live series of 6 weeks, you'll also get a new path to self-acceptance, personal power, and a healthy self-esteem. This full series is a 7-part series training to stop looking for external validation and find inner stability. Plus, why do bad things happen to good people? An insightful 3-part series that examines one of the hardest concepts to cope with, how pain and tragedy can actually make you stronger with the right mindset. And finally, you'll also get the rules to real relationships. Redefine your connection and strengthen your bond with the most important people in your life in this 6-part series. So as you can see, Rabbi Friedman will be walking you through all aspects of relationships and how you can really find your inner strength. You'll have one-on-one support throughout this program and will have the unique opportunity to get your personal questions answered each week throughout the 6 weeks of the series. Plus, that full Q&A will be all about focusing on the questions that you have that haven't gotten answered yet. Most importantly, by investing in yourself and your family right now, you'll discover how the transformative effects of gaining Emunah in calming anxiety, fear, and even depression, and restoring you to a tranquil, joyous state of mind. You'll discover the measures you can take to quell the anxious ruminations that keep you up at night and instead gain inner calm. How to regain peace of mind by losing the term uncertain times and recalling that everything is laid out for us exactly as it should be. The ongoing joy you can experience by releasing the burden of worry and placing your faith and trust in the hands of God. The well of faith inside of you that burns brightly no matter what chaos you might be surrounded with. And finally, discover how to remove fear from your heart by building an awareness of the divine plan that surrounds us at every moment. An all-inclusive package like this rarely comes along, but we listen to all of our members' requests, and we've created an all-encompassing program alongside a one-of-a-kind mentor. So to become a basic member and get the full live 6-part series with Rabbi Friedman, you'll only pay $297. Or you can become a platinum member today and get the full 6-week series plus the new path to self-esteem, why bad things happen to good people, and the rules to real relationships for only $397. So as your special attendee rate just for joining today, you'll get that $100 off. So a basic package will only be $297 and a platinum package will only be $397. But of course, there will be payment plan options available to you when you go to register. I know that sometimes, paying all at once can seem a little bit daunting. So we have payment plan options available to you when you click. And let me go ahead and put that link in right now. I'm going to put it in your chat box. You can actually just copy and paste it into another browser so you can stay with us while we continue to answer questions. It's www.jewishworkshops.com/reclaiming. And for those of you who are on the phone listening and you want to go ahead and you won't be able to copy and paste necessarily, it's just jewishworkshops.com/reclaiming. I'll put that up on your screen as well so that you can see it right there in front of you. And again, when you go ahead and click to register, I do I urge you to please come back to your chat box and just let me know once you're in. We do have limited spots available. And I would love to be able to welcome you. So just come on back, put your first name and the words "I'm in" into the chat box so I can welcome you as part of our new members. And if you're having any difficulties registering, if you need some help, if you have additional questions, please put your name and your telephone number right into the chat box. I have Hannah standing by. I've got Adina coming up a little bit later. So please just go ahead and put your name and telephone number in if you have any questions or need some help. We're happy to go ahead and register you over the phone. But once you register on your own, just come on back and write the words "I'm in" so that I can welcome you there. And if you have any questions about the course itself, please feel free to also come on back and give us some questions. In the meantime, we will be answering some additional questions that have come in throughout today's classes. And I see a question came in, will the series be recorded? Yes, as I mentioned, all of the live classes are taking place on Mondays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Israel time. But if you can't make it to the live class, or if you like to listen to the classes again and again, you will have access to all of the recordings in your own personal membership area where you can listen to them or download them onto your computer, onto a device that you can take on the go. And that way you can listen to it at your convenience. So let me go ahead and get to some additional questions here. But I see some people already joining. That is so exciting. Welcome, Alana. Wonderful to have you. Welcome, Mark. Excellent. I'm so glad to have you as well. And welcome, Esther. So please, like I said, just come on back and write the words "I'm in." I'd really love to be able to welcome you today. In the meantime, Rabbi Friedman, we did have some additional questions and some more are popping up as we speak. Sorry, let me go ahead and find this here. So what would you say are the most important lessons so far that we can really take away from this pandemic?
Well, let's see what the long list consists of. We can practice Judaism, serve God without crowds. It's not a group effort, it's personal. So people who made a Seder in the privacy of their own home this year discovered that mitzvahs belong to you. It is not a community project. A Seder performed privately is as precious a mitzvah as the one done in public. So it doesn't take large groups. It's personal. Or like the guy said, God doesn't have grandchildren. Every Jew is his child. You're not related through your parents. You are related directly to him. So you certainly don't need anybody else or groups of people to make your mitzvah significant. It also taught us that our home and our relationships, our marriages, are far more valuable than we ever thought. There were couples who are on the verge of divorce, but since they've been locked in the house together, they started to like each other. They looked at each other differently. They were suddenly grateful to have each other. Fantastic, positive result. I think those are the two most important immediate benefits. Children being home, no school. We've discovered that they're really intelligent kids. Here we thought they weren't doing so well in school because maybe they're not so bright. Oh, they're very bright. Now we got to wonder, what is the school doing wrong? but we found a whole new respect for our children. And it just goes on and on. We discovered that the workplace is way too tense. Not a humane or healthy environment at all, which is probably why everybody's on antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills. Too much anxiety at the workplace, and we thought it was normal. It's not normal. It's not acceptable. So many insights. We've become so much more mature, so much wiser in just a few months. Hopefully we won't go back to the old foolishness. Life is meant to be meaningful, not stressful.
Thank you so much. That was so beautifully said. And I want to go ahead and get to some more questions here. But first, welcome, Vera. It's great to have you as well. Like I mentioned again, if you have any questions, just come on back and let us know with your name and your telephone number. And in the meantime, I'm going to take some more questions here. Let's see. Oh, we just got a beautiful thing. Thank you so much, Rabbi Friedman. I really appreciate your positivity, sensitivity, and optimism. So thank you. That was really nice. Let's see. Years when it seems that people are going to be so negatively affected by the fall of this society.
Is that the question?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure there's a fall of society. We're definitely going through a reset, recalculating. But who says it's falling? Maybe it's growing. Who says we're going to end up lower than we were? We're going to end up higher than we were. So it is always a little insecure to go through a readjustment, especially a radical readjustment. But why assume that the readjustment is for the negative? We're readjusting to something much more positive. We're going to have a better world, not a lesser world. And even financially, when this all settles down and when the dust all settles, we're going to be richer, not poorer, even financially, monetarily. There's going to be more wealth, not less. I got to tell you this. I'm talking to a businessman, a very successful businessman, who runs a huge corporation. And I asked him a very simple question. Imagine that all the people that work for you in the main office, imagine that they put in 2 hours a day of really focused, constructive work. And the rest of the day they did something else. Would you make any less money? He thought about it for a moment and he said, no, probably not. I said, so what do the people do all day long, every day in the office? 2 hours of focused application to the business would produce exactly the same results you get from having an all day, 9 to 5. So why shouldn't the workplace be a learning place? 2 hours you devote to the needs of the business. The rest of the time you devote to the needs of the people. What can we do to make things better for people? The people we work with, our customers, our providers, our suppliers, our contacts. What can we do to make it better? Spend 5 hours on that subject. You won't make any less money, but it'll be such a much nicer world. So we have to rethink, we're given this opportunity to rethink everything, break all the old habits, and come up with a better model for life. A better model is a kinder model, a more purposeful model. And it turns out to be financially correct. You'll make as much money with 2 hours a day as you do with 7 hours a day. So spend the rest of the time doing good. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
We're headed towards a better world.
Thank you so much. There are definitely some more questions coming in. I do want to just go over exactly what you're getting again. I see some people asking what's the difference between the basic and the platinum membership. So let me just go ahead and go over that one more time. So the basic membership includes the full 6 weeks on reclaiming your Emunah. And the platinum membership is the full online 6-week course, which is all live and interactive. And again, I mentioned that everything will be recorded, so you can listen to it at your convenience. But the platinum package also includes 3 bonus courses, which are all pre-recorded. So you'll have access to those and be able to listen to them at your convenience. That includes a new path to self-acceptance, personal power, and a healthy self-esteem. Why bad things happen to good people, and the rules to real relationships. So you'll get all of those additional bonus courses when you become a platinum member. And then once again, here is the link to join jewishworkshops.com/reclaiming. And when you join, just come on back and let us know. Again, if you have any questions, I see some people putting their phone numbers in. Just give us your phone number. We'll give you a call and help you register over the phone. So Rabbi Friedman, another question that had come in, what do you do if you get stuck? If you know that you need to do something in order to improve, but you just can't, and then comes an extreme guilt when you're not able to fulfill what you're trying to set out to do?
I would recommend 2 things. First of all, talk to a friend or 2 or 3 and see whether what you're trying to do is really necessary, practical, and for you. Because it may be that the reason you're not getting there is because you shouldn't be going there. So check with your friends to make sure that this is a goal that you should have and you should be striving for. And then if you decide that you should be striving for it, then make all your resolutions, all your intentions, make them known to your friends, so that it's not just a thought in your mind or a sensation in your heart. Speak it, say it, state it. Tell somebody that this is what you're going to try to do, so that they can kind of follow your progress. And you have someone to talk to about your progress. That makes it more concrete and more likely for it to happen. Don't try to do it in a bubble.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and just welcome some new members. Welcome, Chaya. Wonderful to have you. Welcome, Barbara. So nice to see that you've joined. And welcome, Alan. Welcome to everyone. Let me go ahead. There was this one question that came in. Is Emunah a character-linked quality, or any person can construct it?
As we will discuss in the course, one of the problems with Emunah, with faith, is that it doesn't change your character. It has other values and other strengths, but it doesn't really change your character, which means that regardless of what your character is, you are capable of faith. They are independent of each other. So there's the good news and there's the bad news. The good news is, regardless of what your personality is or what your character is, you're capable of faith. The bad news is, even if you have good faith, it doesn't give you a better character. character is built with knowledge and wisdom, not on faith. So that may be a little confusing, but those are the facts.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I just want to go ahead and welcome Sam. Wonderful to have you as well. And welcome Shoshana. Let me go ahead and get to a few more questions as we're going to go ahead and close up pretty shortly. If you do have any questions, please come on back and get them in now. Once we're closed, we won't be able to see those, obviously. And if you have any questions or need help registering, please come on back and just put your name and telephone number, because again, once we're closed up, we won't be able to get that information either. Let me go through all of these. Sorry, there's so many here. Let me try to get through.
Do you have a question of your own?
Me?
You're asking everybody else's questions.
That's true. I should probably come and ask one of my own. I just want to make sure that I get to as many as possible, and there were some that came in while you were speaking, so I'm just trying to go through them here now. If things that occur are not wrong and all the things follow God's process, can you just explain the need to fix things? We always feel like we need to fix something.
Well, that's true. We do need to fix things. But that's the plan. That's not a failure. That's not a sign of something going wrong. It's a world in need of fixing. Asher bara elikim lases. Right in the description of creation, God says, this is the world I created for you to do something about it. Lases, to do. So yeah, we're always fixing the world, because the end goal is that everything in the world become part of the oneness of God. Everything in the world contribute to the holiness and to the goodness of the world, and nothing is left out. So every negative experience is asking to be fixed. There's sadness that needs to be fixed. There's fear, it needs to be fixed. There's greed, there's jealousy, there's depression, suicide. All these things come at us asking to be fixed. So instead of being intimidated by them, we take total control of them. Like a person comes into a doctor's office and he's got all sorts of problems, and the doctor gets overwhelmed. Whoa, out of control. You're the doctor. You're not intimidated by illness. You're the fixer of the illness. So stay on top of your game. Don't panic. Don't be impressed. And don't be frightened by illness. You're a doctor. We are here to fix the world. We're never intimidated by what needs fixing. If you don't know that you're here to fix the world, and you look at all the things need fixing, you can get pretty depressed and discouraged. The layman, who is not a doctor, who looks at people's illnesses and their rashes and their fevers and their can be very discouraged, frightened, intimidated, panicked, paralyzed, but not if you're the doctor. So we have to remember, we are the healers of the world. So when we see what needs healing, we go to work. Don't get intimidated.
Great, thank you so much. We actually did have some questions, like I mentioned, that came in ahead of time. Rabbi, the biggest challenge I'm having now relates to this unprecedented time. I've been working on improving my bitachon mindset and felt incredibly uplifted until recently. The question I have is, in times like this, where does hishtadlus end and bitachon begin? While I tend to invert and look inward through the lens of a Torah mindset and try to answer what Hashem wants from this, I am finding myself incredibly frustrated and confused by others. Some people aren't wearing masks. Some people aren't being careful. Where do we decide what our hishtadlus is and when to accept that Hashem is controlling these decisions so we go about our day and not worry despite what's happening around us?
It seems like part of the confusion is, what are we supposed to do as a moral question versus what are we supposed to do as a medical question? Medically, health-wise, what are we supposed to do? Wear a mask, not wear a mask, go out in the public, don't go out to the public, wash your hands constantly, don't wash your hands too much. We're getting very mixed messages, and I can understand the confusion. You have people who seem to be authorities who say wearing a mask is dangerous. You're breathing in your same used up breath. You're not developing immunity to the germs around you. All sorts of seemingly convincing arguments that say not to wear a mask. On the other hand, you have the experts saying you must wear a mask. Confusing. But we're not all obligated to be experts in medicine. We're obligated to be experts in goodness. Goodness, holiness, kindness. In that, we're not confused at all. So medically, yes, we are confused. And that's part of the challenge. The confusion about this virus is in some way worse than the virus itself. You hear these experts coming out with saying, we now discovered that this virus acts in this way. Whoa, it took you a long time to figure that out. So we still don't know what it is? We're still not sure what we're dealing with? That's scary. In other words, there really are no experts. Nobody is on top of this thing except God himself. So here's a simple formula. You use your faith, your emunah, your bitachon. Everything is good, everything is great. That already happened. That which already happened, we have no problem with that. God knows what he's doing. That's what God did. It's fine. But what about a minute from now? What should happen a minute from now? What already happened, no question. It was all for the good. That's where our emunah is, concerning what already happened. Concerning what needs to happen, here we take full responsibility. We have to do the right thing with no regrets about what already happened. So let's keep our faith and our hishtadlus separated. Faith applies to what already happened. Hishtadlus is what's going to happen a minute from now. Going back to the question, what's going to be? What's going to be is not my problem. What I should do, yes, that's my hishtadlus. So there was a lot of suffering. There was a lot of tragedy. Not only those who passed away, but those who survived with great difficulty and great pain and great anguish to the family and to themselves. All of that happened. There are no regrets. None of that could have been avoided once we see that it happened. That means it was meant to happen, and it's not like, had we known better, had we not, then it would have been avoided. No, there's a reason that we didn't know better, because it wasn't meant to be avoided. So it's all fine, it's all good. But what's going to happen a minute from now? More suffering, more death? No, not if I can help it. So I have to do whatever I can to make sure that from now on, only good news. So there's the difference between the past and the future. Concerning the past, I have faith. Concerning the future, I have a little responsibility.
Thank you so much. I definitely want to welcome Helene. Wonderful to have you. Exciting to see. And welcome Miriam and Michael. Welcome. I have a few more questions here before we close up. So again, if you have any questions, just come on back before we're done so that we can get to your question as well. Rabbi Friedman, we had a question come in that says, I have a hard time feeling like I'm a good person when I constantly have bad things happening to me. For example, getting married late in life, infertility issues, miscarriages. It's hard for me to be able to keep the balance between understanding that God has my back when I'm doing all of the right things and the right things are not happening back.
Some of the greatest Jewish leaders, the greatest tzaddikim in our history, were born after the mother had a miscarriage. I think the term miscarriage is a little incorrect. Miscarriage makes it sound like it shouldn't have happened, like some kind of a mistake. It's not a mistake. A pregnancy is a significant event in the life of a soul. It comes down into a body, into a pregnancy. It lives in the womb for a certain amount of time and fulfills its destiny. Its destiny was to be a fetus. That's a life. There's life in the womb, there's life outside the womb. Life outside the womb can be 120 years. It can be 10 years. It's a life. Whatever amount of time that the soul was given or needs to be in a body, that's how long the soul will stay in the body. Some souls need to be conceived, need to have a life in the womb. They don't need to have a life outside the womb. We call that a miscarriage, but that's not correct. The soul that was conceived, the soul living in the womb for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month, for 3 months, that's its life. That's what it needed, and that's what you gave it. Nothing went wrong. It's not what you were asking for, but it's a productive and holy event. You gave a soul what it needed. That's called mothering. Because of that, you now deserve to have a child the way you're asking for, a child that will live outside the womb. So don't be discouraged. A miscarriage, or what we call a miscarriage, actually brings you closer to having the child that you're asking for. And then that child is born with benefits. Great people were born after the mother had a miscarriage. So don't see it as a negative. It's almost like a soul needs to be born into the womb. It needs to have a fetal experience. It needs to experience being conceived and being a fetus. That's all it needs. But somebody has to be its mother. So imagine if God came to you and said, this soul needs to be conceived. And once it has a few weeks or a few months of life inside the womb, it has attained its perfection, and that's all it needed. Would you be willing to be its mother? Of course, you would say yes. If that's what it needs and you're looking for a mother, of course. Problem is that we expected the child to be born into the world outside the womb, and the shock of not happening, the disappointment, is horrible, devastating. But that's why we are told in the Torah that life inside the womb is a life. And some souls need nothing more than that. It's just that we don't know in advance that that's what it was meant to be. But after the fact, we can remind ourselves and tell ourselves, the soul came, got what it needed, you nurtured it to its perfection, and then it went back content. Nothing went wrong. Of course, when the child is born and lives outside the womb, that would be even better.
Thank you. That was really beautifully said. I've got one more question that we can get to today. So let me go ahead and get there. I just wanted to welcome Linda. So wonderful to have you as well. In a situation where there is very little respect by fellow Jews for observance and mitzvos, is that a place where we should try to just keep the peace or say something? Is this an opportunity to fix it?
It's definitely an opportunity. But here's something people don't often think about. Most people's objection to observance has some validity. And we should listen to their objections and learn from them. Like if someone's parents say, you've become fanatical. You're a fanatic. I don't know you anymore. Listen to them. They may be revealing a truth you need to hear. Maybe you have become fanatical. Stop it. Don't go overboard. So not every objection is illegitimate. Listen. You could learn something very valuable from it. You're only doing it to spite me. You're only doing it because you're paranoid. You're emotionally unhealthy. Listen. Might be true. And if it is, then fix it. If their objection is simply that this is not what they're used to, they don't understand it, they can't relate to it, well, then the response is educate. Educate. But the main thing, how did you become observant? Well, something happened that inspired you. Nobody pushed you, nobody forced you, nobody demanded it of you. You were inspired. But now you turn around and expect your family or your friends or whoever it is, you expect them to accommodate you in your observance. Nobody expected that of you. So what is hateful to you, don't do to others. They need to find their inspiration just like you found yours. So you can't expect your family to become observant because of you. You didn't become observant because of anyone. So respect their individuality and daven that they should find their inspiration just like you found yours. And then it will be their Yiddishkeit, not your Yiddishkeit. And even with children, you became observant, but your family, your children don't want to be. And you feel horrible. You feel like you have to demand it or force it. Otherwise, you're a failure as a Jew. That's not true. Your children need to find their inspiration. It would be nice if you were their inspiration, but it doesn't always happen that way. Your family was not your inspiration. Your inspiration came outside the family. Well, why aren't your children entitled to the same thing? So you're a Baal Tshuva, you should want your children to be Baalei Tshuva. But many Baalei Tshuva feel, no, I want my children to be from birth. I did Tshuva for all of them. Now they can all be from birth. You can't do Tshuva for somebody else. And we all need to be Baalei Tshuva in this generation. There is no from birth. So, welcome the opportunity to inspire. Don't be disappointed that it doesn't come natural or effortless. And if what they're saying is valid, then take it seriously. It could be that you're doing something wrong. Can't become self-righteous. Just because you're keeping mitzvahs doesn't mean you're perfect. So again, keep it light. No forcing, no demanding, no expectations, just the opportunity to inspire.
Thank you so much. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined us today from all over the world. It was wonderful to see so many different countries and places. People are writing in such beautiful things. Thank you. So beautiful. I'm really inspired. Thank you. Take care and have a lovely day. Thank you, Rabbi. I have been really inspired today. So Rabbi Friedman, I would just ask if you could leave us with some words, parting words, for everyone who's still here on the line. If there are people that are kind of on the fence, is this the right program for me? Is this the right, the next step of the journey that I should take? If you can just leave us with some words, more words of wisdom, I should say.
I think the challenge of our generation is to get to know God. It is the ultimate mitzvah for us, given our conditions, our realities, our circumstances. Unlike other generations, where we were expected to have self-sacrifice, we were expected to have great scholarship in Torah, this generation needs to get to know God, because the final chapter on the purpose of creation doesn't demand self-sacrifice, because that's been done. It doesn't demand great rabbinics, because we've got it all down. It demands getting to know the personal side of God. Because Rambam says that in the days of Moshiach, the quest, all human beings, when we won't have to work for a living and we won't have to fight wars, everyone's quest will be to get to know God. So this course literally addresses this issue. We've neglected our knowledge of God, but we have a great knowledge of Judaism. So now's the time to fill in that gap. Let's get to know God, because to know him is to love him.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Friedman. Thank you to everyone who's been here today with us. I just have to say, Rabbi Friedman, because you can't see the chat box here, there are more people writing in. Thank you so much. So inspiring as always. Rabbi Friedman's amazing inspiration makes you look at things in a new way for me. Thank you. What an incredible class. So I just want to go ahead and pass those on to you. Thank you for being here with us. We look forward to seeing you next Monday, and I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible as well. I'm going to go ahead and leave the webinar open just for a little bit longer. You won't hear us or see us, but I will leave it open in case you still need to get your name and telephone number in with any questions or need help registering. And again, welcome to all of our brand new members who have already registered. And for anyone who is still ready to go ahead and register and hasn't yet, just go ahead and take this link down while it's still up here. It's jewishworkshops.com/reclaiming. All right, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much, Rabbi Friedman.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you.